And welcome to another edition of the Hutchinson Report. I am your host, Earl Ofari, Hutchinson. For the last month and a half on the Hutchinson Report, we have spent a lot of time talking about issues, governmental issues. We had a whole series where we had all candidates for the major offices in the city of Los Angeles, city controller, city attorney, and of course, the mayor. And we have focused so much on the Hutchinson Report, on the compelling issues of the day. And many of our listeners now have become almost Civics 101 students out there. The budget problems, deficits, financing, how city governments and county government and state and, of course, the national government, they're dealing with that. Development projects, just the whole gamut of things that we talk about on the Hutchinson Report. Political accountability, transparency, it's just endless. That's our mission here on the Hutchinson Report, to keep you informed on not only local, state, national, but in general, things that you, as a concerned citizen, resident, and voter, should know about. But we're always staying on the Hutchinson Report with the issues. So today, having said that, we're going to be delving into something near and dear at home. KTYM is located in Inglewood, so we talked about everything under the sun, under the Hutchinson Report. We've gone to the far ends of the earth, so we're coming back home today in our near and dear city of Inglewood, and we're going to be talking about many of the issues that impact on residents in the city of Inglewood, development issues, budget, finance, and so forth. With me in the studio today, it's a pleasure to have City Council person, that's the Inglewood City Council person from the 2nd District. Gilbert Lindsay used to say the great 9th District in LA, so we'll just say the great 2nd District, and of course the 1st and the 3rd and the 4th, all of them are great in the city of LA. Judy Dunlap. And for maybe the one or two persons out there that do not know Judy Dunlap, she has been a long tenured member of the Inglewood City Council, well versed in all the issues that impact on the city of Inglewood. But Judy, Associate of Arts degree, bachelor's degree, a master's degree, United Democratic Club of Inglewood, the Inglewood South Bay branch of the NAACP, Southern California Association of Governments, Women Against Gun Violence, the Black American Political Association of California, the New Frontier Democratic Club. It just goes on and on, her credentials. So, Judy, welcome to the show today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Judy, right off the top, I have been so concerned about budget issues. We've had a number of elected officials on in the past from both the city and the county and state, and actually national too. Out the box, one of the first things that I have been concerned with on the Hutchinson Report is in this era now, fiscal austerity, where cities are facing so many challenges in terms of raising revenue, balancing budgets, and essentially making sure that fiscal survival, in this case, hopefully growth, is certainly paramount. So, the city of Inglewood now, I know that you have wrestled with budget issues for a long time in the city. So, what's your view overall in terms of the budget situation as it stands now? Is the city out of hot water, so to speak? And looking ahead, what can be done to ensure fiscal solvency in the city of Inglewood?
Well, that's so much to address. Let's see where I can start. We, as many cities, began to realize, I'm going to say around 2009, that we were having some serious financial problems. Around 2008, 2009, we started out our budget year. We had a $20 million surplus, and within 2 years, not only was that gone, we began to have a $18.6 million structural deficit. Now, for your listeners out there, the difference between a deficit and a structural deficit is a deficit sometimes is just caused by a one-time issue, like some type of emergency that takes place in the city. You have to spend money on things you had not anticipated, like possibly a sewer failure or something that was not predicted with regard to the budget. A structural deficit is an ongoing, very serious issue. That means your ongoing expenditures is more than your ongoing revenues, and that's where a real problem comes into play. So we had to wrestle with that in 2009, 2010. I find that for the city of Inglewood, a very difficult issue for me was the lack of transparency to the public with regard to that impending financial potential disaster. Actually, at a time when it was being brought to our attention and I was discussing it at council, we had others in the city officials saying, oh, everything is okay. Everything is okay. Well, it wasn't okay. And I'm one that believes that you need to face your problems directly, because when you come to grips with them, you can begin to solve them. So they were ignored for a while. Eventually, they could not be ignored. When the budget came out and we brought back an expert in finance to do some reports for us, we were sort of like throwing water on our face with regard to the city council and city administration. It was exactly where we were. The city then took a couple of years and attempt to address that. Obviously, when you have an $18.6 million structural deficit, you have to deal with it, and you have to deal with it right away. The city council took some drastic measures with regard to layoffs. People lost their jobs, unfortunately. Also, furloughs for employees that remained. Furlough means that people are not working as many hours, which also means they're not being paid. Same amount. City Hall had been closed every other Friday on a regular basis. Now we were closed every Friday. And everyone had a 10% cut in pay. Well, we have one employee who doesn't take the furlough, but everybody else takes the furlough. Even elected officials, we voluntarily stepped up to the plate to take a 10% furlough, even though there was no real requirement to do that. It's a part of being a member of the team, and so that includes all of us. So we have the furloughs, we have the layoffs, hopefully attempting to restructure departments with regard to cost-saving measures. We are working with the union leadership to develop some ideas on how to save money in the future, because an ongoing furlough can't just continue. Meaning people just can't continue to lose 10% of their pay. Now, people are willing to do that because it saves jobs, and that's very critical, because it's very important to me as a sitting member of the council to protect as many jobs as possible, keep as many people employed as possible. And many of our residents actually, many of our employees actually reside in the city of Inglewood. They are actually our residents. So it's about also protecting our local economy when we protect jobs. So it's very important to me that we do that. But I want to share with you one thing, and that is we do have financial policies in place, and I'm going to say that part of many of the reasons by which we got ourselves into these problems was our failure as a city to abide by our own financial policies. And unfortunately, we are still not abiding by those policies. So my goal is to continue to express my desire that we follow those policies, and hopefully the rest of the council will do that, because I think that's important to our financial future. One-time money comes into a city. It can't be used to balance the budget. If you do, then you're just aggravating the structural deficit. You're not fixing the problem. I'm going to share with you that last year we received $5 million in one-time money because we had a new trash hauler. And all of the contractors who put in proposals to us had agreed to a $5 million upfront fee. No matter what company we chose, they're all willing to give us $5 million. Well, I believe that $5 million all should have been put into reserves. Now, remember, we have unfunded liabilities, which means when an employee retires, they have sick pay, they have vacation. This is their money, and right now we don't have enough of their money sitting in the bank to pay our employees. And once again, it's their money. They've earned it, and we need to have those reserves. I believe all $5 million of that money should have been put into our reserves. Unfortunately, last year, the council, the city chose to take half of that money to balance the budget from last year, because even though we had a structural deficit, we still had a real deficit. So they took $2.5 million of that. So we have to get our house in order. We have to begin to really focus on the problems.
One of the things that, by the way, if you're just joining us today, my special guest on the Hutchinson Report is Judy Dunlap, Inglewood City Council District, long-term member of the City Council, and certainly very well versed on city issues, particularly finance and development. We're going to get into that in a second too. Transparency, I do want to talk about that. I think that's so important. You know, I've asked many elected officials that we've had on the show here what specific things, not so much is not being done, but what you really want to see and what cities should do, elected officials should do, to ensure that citizens all the time not just know how money is spent, decisions are made, but that the pipeline is really a two-way street, that they're always informed about decisions that elected officials are made. So On the city council in the city of Inglewood, your experience there and certainly making residents aware of all issues that the city council is dealing with, measures that have been taken.
Well, thank you. I love the topic of transparency, and for my entire tenure on the City Council, that's been actually a focus and a drive of mine, is to involve the community. I've had more town hall meetings than any other member of the City Council because it's about communicating to the constituency about what's going on in the city, even outside of the official actions that take place at a City Council, to let the people know what's happening. Transparency involves our council meetings as well, and I believe that we've been kind of going backwards. Regardless of what people may say, elected officials may say, everyone's going to say transparency is a good thing, but you need to see what they do to actually promote transparency. In our city, unfortunately, we've been kind of going backwards. There now has been a kill switch put on the dais for city council members. That means our microphones can be turned off during council meetings. We have members of the public who come up and ask questions and they're not answered, not even afterwards. And I can see where during a 3-minute public debate, public comment, they can come up and ask a question. I can see why one might not want to take time for the meeting necessarily to answer it at that time, but I believe within 2 or 3 days, that person should receive an answer to that question from city administration. That's part of transparency. And so I would like to see us incorporate that. Also, I think that members of the public should be given more respect at the microphone than what we have been giving them. Because I think a council encourages participation when they are welcoming to the public who comes and attends their meetings. Also, we need to make sure that there is enough discussion, public discussion on the issues at the public meeting, which is televised and streamed on YouTube, so that people who don't come to the meetings, they know what we're doing, and they can hear the different viewpoints. I'm also very much supportive of different points of view being expressed. That's what makes a democracy. That's what makes it strong, is hearing these different points of view. And you know, when people, over last year, a lot of conversation about the city of Bell, they want to know, how do things like this happen? I said, cities of bells like that happens when there becomes one mindset, a very domineering voice that controls everything, and then you no longer have the kind of transparency that the public not only requires but should demand. And in Inglewood, I've always stressed that open communication is very, very important. I want to share with you in a city that's very overtaxed, which is the city of Inglewood. We pay some of the highest taxes in Southern California. I'm going to give you an example, if I may. Mm-hmm. About 3 or 4 weeks ago at a meeting, we had 4 resolutions that we were going to adopt to set a public hearing. The public hearing is going to be on the same night. It was going to be in the month of June this year. And the public hearings had to do with property tax assessments. Now, you want to get a property owner or homeowner's attention, you talk about property taxes. They're very interested. Well, these were 4 separate agenda items. Typically, they're voted on separately, meaning there's a motion to approve whatever the agenda item is. Pretty much it was to approve an engineer's report that dealt with the assessment. Then it also had to do with setting the public hearing. Remember, all 4 of these hearings were going to be on the same evening. But obviously the engineer's reports were very different because they're different areas of the city and different types of taxes. The biggest tax that was there was a streetlight landscape tax assessment district. Immediately, there was one motion to put them all together. To support transparency, I asked, can we please vote on these separately so that way each member of the council can speak to each one of these separately, which would be more time to communicate with the public. I was overruled, and they voted to do them all together. Now, let me share with you the importance of...
Well, why don't we hold that point for a second? We have to take a break.
Okay.
And if you're just joining us today on the Hutchinson Report, my special guest is Inglewood City Council Person, 2nd District, Judy Dunlap, long-term member of the City Council. And today we're talking about a range of issues. Not only the budget, not only transparency. When we come back, we'll finish that. But also I want to get into another area, redevelopment. Hollywood Park, that's the big one. That's the jewel in the crown, I should say. Well, ground too, and also the forum too. There's a lot of ground being broken these days in Inglewood for a lot of things. I want to talk about that, its impact on the city in terms of where we're going with these projects, the revenue that's generated, and its overall impact, not just on Inglewood, but surrounding communities too. Once again, you're listening to the Hutchinson Report. I'm your host, Earl Ofari Hutchinson. Quick break. We will be right back. Oh, before that, I should say this too. We're going to have Inglewood Mayor James Butts. He will be on the Hutchinson Report on June 21st. And so, I'm always envisioning this as a part one and a part two. Continuing the same track, looking at the issues of development, the budget, and so forth. And we'll have the mayor on the 21st, and we'll continue that dialogue with him. Anyway, Hutchinson Report, Hutchinson here. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Hutchinson Report. I'm your host, Earl Ofari Hutchinson. Inglewood's the focus today. We're talking about development issues, transparency, the budget, Hollywood Park, the Forum, all the things that are happening in the city of Inglewood. Special guest today, my special guest today is Inglewood Councilperson Judy Dunlap. That's in the 2nd District. And we're going over a range of issues. Judy, before we went to the break, you want to make a quick point, and I want to hit that Hollywood Park and the Forum because, as you know, that's it's been on the drawing board, it's been in the news, and a lot of people have many questions about that. Judy.
Yes, thank you. Getting back to the setting of these public hearings, what I wanted to bring out, which I thought was very important, was the fact that the public needed to know, which there was no time to really discuss it when they put them all together, and that was that taxpayers can actually protest these assessments. However, at the time of the public hearing, it's too late to protest because at the close of the public hearing, the time for the protest is ended. But if 51% or 50% plus one of the property owners, the percentage in those particular tax assessment districts were to protest, that tax could be eliminated. The public has a right to know that. The public, it doesn't mean that they would choose to eliminate the tax if they knew what the funds were going to be used for, but I believe that the people I represent have a right to know and have that choice. That if this tax is something that you want to continue on your property and these are the services it will provide, yes, you support that. And if you don't, you have a right to protest. That's the part of transparency that I'm always working towards with regard to the city of Inglewood and my constituents and the constituents of the city throughout the city with regard to knowing what we're doing and what their rights and powers are, because I do believe in empowering the residents of this community to be an active participant in city government.
Now, the big project, Hollywood Park, it's been on again, off again. It's just drug on and on. By the way, that's the Hollywood Park racetrack, which is a centerpiece and been a long-standing, going back to the 30s, a centerpiece in the city of Inglewood, big revenue producer, and much more. I mean, national, international acclaim, but it appears Hollywood Park will be a thing of the past as of this year. At least that's the reports that we're getting. So now many residents are wanting to know, okay, no Hollywood Park. Number one, what goes in there? What will be in that extensive space? Number one. And number two, what impact will that have overall on all the range of things? Property taxes, you just mentioned that. Congestion, movement in and out of the city, business development, the economy of this city. I'm putting together a lot of things, but Hollywood Park is that jewel in the crown. So where does it go? I keep saying ground because I'm just so. Hollywood Park has been so much a part of me for so many years too. When I think of it, I almost think of groundbreaking. But Judy, all the issues involving the park.
Well, let me say that even though this project has been on the drawing board, as you said, for many, many years, believe it or not, it's only since the LA Times and other news media have come out with the fact that the park has given up its racing days for next year. Now all of a sudden it's hitting home with people, oh my gosh, the Hollywood Park is going away. Believe it or not, I don't think it really sank in before. But now with the giving up the racing days, it's hit home, and a lot of people are upset about it. They're saying, oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful historic venue, which it is. It is. For people who've gone over there, who've never been there, they are like surprised. They say, oh my gosh, it's like being in an oasis. It actually is such a beautiful park. And it's going to be sorely missed, and I would have preferred myself that it stay a racetrack. And remember, a racetrack actually is like a city inside it. There are hundreds of jobs there. But it was purchased, it's private property. Once again, private property rights. A developer purchased that property, and that's what he wanted to do, was to develop it. It's been sort of sitting on the just nothing's happening because of the economy, of course. investors with regard to bringing money to the table to do the construction, to do the building, and also selling of homes. The home market has been greatly depressed, so why would one bring new homes onto the market in a depressed stage? Also commercial retail, all the vacancy. Was this the best time? So the people who have the money, of course, are making those decisions because it's their money, and they want to make sure that the project is successful. It looks now like they're going to be moving forward. I would have preferred that at least possibly 75 to 80 acres, which would be to the north end, which has been dormant. Maybe they could have started with a piece of it, because they're actually going to do it piecemeal anyway. But maybe they could have started with just that over the time in the past and redevelopment when it was still active, when we had the money. Remember, we did have $240 million redevelopment before it was abolished by the state. We could have actively participated more in that. So now it looks like it's going to come to fruition for people who have heard Gerard McCallum, who's a spokesperson for Hollywood Park Tomorrow's project, to describe the project and look at the pictures. It's beautiful, it's fascinating, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, they have water features and all kinds of things that the community will love, to have. Restaurants, which we're craving, some nice restaurants in our city, and so we're looking forward to all of that.
Now, the forum. There's activity going on with the forum too. I see the construction development around there. Mm-hmm. I know the contracts, subcontracts. I know there's something, but I'm not clear, Judy, with the forum. Exactly, is this renovating the forum? And I'm assuming it's, of course, it's a private company. In fact, they're out in New York, if I'm not mistaken. So talk about that project too, and what's in store for the forum. Because when you think of the forum, historically, obviously you thought of sports, but that passed with the Staples Center, but still as a major entertainment venue. So what are we looking at with the forum?
Well, with Madison Square Garden, having purchased it, I'm going to say that it's bringing the feeling of pride back to our community, because when the Lakers and the Kings left, we suffered. It was like a loss to the family. And it took us a long time. I don't think we ever got over it. We're still not over it. But now that Madison Square Garden has stepped up to the plate, we're thinking, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. A company of that magnitude and that reputation that'll bring prestige and pride back to our city. They are definitely renovating it. I would hope that you would have an opportunity, or your listeners, to view they have a great video and with regard to the renovation or some of the other sites that they've had. Actually, there are other venues, and they plan to do the same thing here in Inglewood. It's wonderful, the plans that they have. So we're looking forward to that. And obviously we'll be generating some revenue. They plan to spend $50 million in that renovation. It's very exciting, and they expect to make it a #1 entertainment venue once again here in Southern California. So we're very excited about that.
Much needed. Final few minutes, Judy, want to talk about the LA expansion. We couldn't, leave the studio without that. We saw for a time signs all over the city of Inglewood, no LA expansion, no this, no that. Well, we're seeing that debate back on the table again. What does that mean, and how will it impact on the city of Inglewood? Because as many people know that live in the city of Inglewood, Inglewood is definitely in the flight zone.
Yes.
So not just expansion, but one of the bigger issues, property values, and tandem with that, noise. Mm-hmm. So, Judy, where does that stand now? And the thinking of city officials about LAX expansion.
Well, as you stated, the LAX expansion, that concept has been on the table for many years. But with the court decree 2005, a regional solution was on the table with regard to expanding Ontario Airport, taking some of the traffic out there, which actually has not occurred. And actually Ontario and neighboring jurisdictions such as the city of San Bernardino are suing the city of Los Angeles with regard to not fulfilling their responsibilities with regard to expanding that airport, because that area needs that economy at Ontario. They need the jobs, they need the airport, and so they're working to increase that, and that benefits us here in Inglewood and this area with regard to LAX. So regional expansion is something that I support. With regard to the airport, the terminal rehabilitation, I support that. I do not support the moving of the northern runway 260 feet further north. I stand with our Congresswoman and the newly elected City of Los Angeles Mayor, who oppose the moving of that runway. That, for the first time, will impact North Inglewood, which is the area I represent. For all of these years, forever since the airport's been there, we've not had a single home in the noise contour. So we've not been affected to the same degree as the rest of the city. However, moving the runway further north will impact us, and I'm greatly opposed to it and want to work with my constituents to challenge that and to make sure that that does not happen. You know, the city of Los Angeles took a vote prior to their election saying, yes, they were going to move the runway. Well, we're going to try to put a stop to that. Like I say, the new mayor of LA is on board, so we're going to work with him. But it's very, very critical to make sure that we're not more fully impacted than what we have been in the past. Let me just say this. In District 2, inclement weather, I know some of my constituents will listen and say, well, we're impacted. We hear the airplanes. When it's inclement weather, they do fly further north, and we see the airplanes and we hear them. But moving the runway is a whole different ballgame. So we want to put a stop to that, and we need to make sure the regional expansion, as the court decree put into effect, we need to make sure that that's focused on.
Well, in the final minute that we have left, Judy, looking ahead, getting your crystal ball out. We've ranged, kind of done a bus person's tour over some of the major hot button issues. But moving ahead, the city of Inglewood is in this case, jewel in the crown in terms of a hub city. It attracts a lot of traffic through the city. We have Hollywood Park, the casino, have the forum, and of course, you know, businesses in the city. And it's a vibrant city in many, many ways. So are you optimistic about the future of the city in terms of, you know, how things are shaping up in terms of the budget, in terms of development, all the things that are on tap, on the drawing board for the city in the future? So I'm asking you to look ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very optimistic with regard to the city's future. The Madison Square Garden and Hollywood Park, not only are they a boost to our morale as a city, they will be a boost to our income. And with regard to traffic, yes, these projects, once fully developed, will impact traffic. But remember, when the racetrack was in its heyday, 40,000 people visited that track on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. When the Forum had the Lakers and the Kings playing, 20,000 people were there visiting. So we're kind of used.
We're definitely going down memory lane on that one.
Oh yeah, we've had the traffic. It's just a matter of now it's just traffic, not to that even degree. But we're going to address whatever those traffic needs are. We're going to make sure that the airport money for the rehab of Century Boulevard, $10 million, they promised us that takes place. And this project will be, once again, something beautiful, something our residents can look forward to. And the Madison Square Garden, like I said, not only will it be creating lots of jobs for our community, and the $50 million rehab will be prevailing wage jobs, and we're hoping that many of our Inglewood residents will be employed. They already are beginning to employ our local residents. And then, of course, the permanent jobs that will be created. And once again, I think the biggest thing is a source of pride for this community. The revenue will help us to get our structural deficit completely ended. Our employees can start working a 5-day work week again and providing the kind of services that our community deserves. And that's really what it's all about, taking care of the residents and the quality of life in this community.
Well, I think on that note, I think that we'll put the capper to it. That's a punctuation mark to it. That will end it. Judy Dunlap, certainly I want to thank you for joining us on the Hutchinson Report today. Talking about the city of Inglewood. Remember, June 21st, the mayor of the city of Inglewood, Mr. James Butts, will be on. We're going to continue our dialogue on the Hutchinson Report, talking about development, the budget, future of Inglewood. We'll have the mayor on. We'll be talking and discussing those issues again. Judy, thank you for joining us today on the Hutchinson Report. Always an illuminating conversation with you.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.